All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Noteworthy History. I'm your host, Tong, and I'm back again with Andy,
Hello.
Luke,
It's me.
Will,
Hello.
and Gabriel.
Hello.
Good to have you back again, Gabe. How's Italy doing so far?
Pretty great. No French people except me. No Napoleon walking through the Alps and routing
Not yet.
the Austrians. So yeah, and the Pope is not kidnapped, so all is doing pretty well.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. And it's also good to have you back on again, especially just to bookend the Napoleon in Egypt series as well.
No, exactly. I missed one episode, right?
2 episodes, I believe.
2 episodes. Oh no, wow. I missed a lot.
Don't worry. I mean, today's where things finally catch up with our good boy Napoleon as luck finally starts running out. But
Don't worry,
last
we'll have
week-
a flashback episode.
Oh yeah, we definitely will. And also, if worst comes to worst, just watch the highlights that we're going to be releasing afterwards. So
Perfect. Yeah, no, I'll
Yeah.
I'll do that. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. boost the views too. Now, last week, Napoleon's initial plans got sunk alongside with his entire fleet during the Battle of the Nile. And now he's trying to play nice with the locals while just squeezing them a bit for every single penny they've got. All, of course, under the guise of civilizing the Egyptians. However, as we're going to see today, the consequences of his revolting tactics will plague him through the rest of his time in Egypt. You'll see how those puns play in. Trust me.
Those
Yeah.
puns?
Oh, you'll see. This is
Okay.
it's not even puns, they're just foreshadowing. Look at that. I've advanced my wordplay.
You're
He's
an
done it.
English major now.
Oh boy. Is that an upgrade or a downgrade?
Bro,
from
no
the history?
spoilers. No spoilers, bro.
Okay, all right. I'll keep this locked up. But pretty much last time, as I was saying, Napoleon realized he has to make Egypt kind of his thing after the British fleet under Nelson destroyed his only connections back to France and to Europe. So now he's just trying to raise as much tax revenue while keeping order and law in Cairo as his new headquarters. Unfortunately, things aren't going so hot, especially since it turns out people don't like it when a foreign group moves into town and starts taxing them heavily. Who would have thought? You know.
Who'd have thought? So,
The events that we're going to be talking about today focuses mostly on what's known as the Cairo Revolt. This event here, it has a lot of precursors. Like before, we were talking about this kind of weird battle of civility between the Egyptians and between Napoleon and the French, and how they're just pretending to be polite and work with each other while in the background they're just sniggering about how the French are disgusting heathens who spit on the ground and then rub it into their boots. Which
Does the Cairo Revolt refer to a revolt in Cairo, or is it the French being disgusting?
kind of both, honestly. It kind of captures both senses of that phrase.
Cairo is revolted.
Yeah. So the treatment that the French are giving towards the local Egyptians while they're trying to be we respect Islam, we are going to celebrate the birthday of Muhammad. Meanwhile, Napoleon is giggling at the fact that he's dressing up like a Muslim. He's or dressed up as an Ottoman Muslim. And he's like, lol, I'm never going to wear this stuff again. So everyone's kind of pushing back and forth. The issue, though, is that while they could have kept up this passive aggressive war for a while if things didn't get too heated, as is the case with Egypt in the summer, things do get a bit hot. One of the first sources of the tension is that as the French are trying to keep things orderly in Cairo and in northern Egypt, the Mamluks are still running about in southern Egypt, and they're still skirmishing against the French. And while they don't have the best record of pitched battles, as seen in Alexandria and at the Battle of the Pyramids, they're able to do some hit and run against French troops when they're set out. And one incident right before the Cairo Revolt is that a whole boatload of French troops are sent back after a failed little expedition out there to try and knock some heads out in southern Egypt, with all the French troops with their eyes gouged out and just mutilated in some fashion or another. And this was like done by the Mamluks as kind of a warning to the French, But
Oof.
yeah,
A boatload. So were
Yeah,
they
pretty
on
much.
a boat, or are you just using that as a generic metric for a number of French people?
No, this is the tie-in episode where we start talking about the Suez Canal too.
nah, not quite the Suez Canal, but the Nile is kind of a useful river to navigate North and South Egypt. It just happens to run down the entire country. So, so it's a literal boatload of French soldiers that are just horribly mutilated and cut up, their eyes just gouged out. So, when news of this got back to Cairo, obviously the Egyptian populace were kind of scared that, a bunch of pissed off French comrades might decide to take it out on the local Egyptian population. And I guess in a sense it did happen, because what happens next is Napoleon, in a gesture of magnanimosity, asks the council of like local Egyptian notables, the Diwan, to go ahead and draft some tax policies based on like what they've done in Egypt before. So the Diwan goes ahead, drafts it all out, and Napoleon's like, "Oh, hand me that over, please. Yes, I'll take a look." Flips through it. It's like, "This is all great. Can I add 2 zeros to everything? Just I think that's not going to be too bad. I mean, zero is nothing. It's practically nothing, We'll just go ahead and add a few more zeros to everyone's tax, and everything should be fine, right as rain." So they go ahead, they modify all the taxes, and increases it somewhat. But as a little catch, they're like, "Look, we get it. It's going to be hard to pay this new tax, so we're going to give you a chance to pay the entire thing in 2 installments. You pay half now, and you pay half 6 months from now. That way, it's not that bad of a burden on you guys. In fact, if anything, you're paying less taxes right now than what you usually do for like the Mamluks in the first installment. So like, we're actually kind of helping you guys out,
Wow.
Yeah,
Such marketing.
I know, right? The French, if there's one thing Napoleon's good at, it's PR stuff,
When's
All the
he
while-
gonna move to 12 easy installments of $5.99?
Just paying taxes every month. Could you imagine that? Just like every day every month you got to do the taxes and send it in.
Yeah.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
Mm.
also like about Egyptian council deciding the taxes. Like I'd expect they're locals. They essentially don't want to pay taxes to the French. So like,
yeah.
It's pretty sure like they lowballed the amount by a fair amount.
That's
they were
fair.
like, it's kind of like how you go in negotiations where you start with a super low price, then the guy it's like super high price. And
Yeah,
it's
you
like-
try to haggle the price a bit.
Yeah,
then
they're
like-
all about haggling.
It's like if you start with the moderate option, like if the other person takes advantage of you, you're stuck with a higher than moderate. Like if you're both
Right.
extremes, it cancels out and you use the moderate option.
That's
Uh,
fair. That's fair. I
yeah.
mean, well, looking at the records, this is of course written by a local Egyptian, Al-Jabarti. His description of it is that the taxes were slightly higher than normal. So we're not sure if they did indeed lowball the efforts, but then Napoleon happened to highball it even more. So therefore, they were just paying the same amount. But either way, it seemed like they were more or less respectful of the norms in terms of how much the taxes had to be. But
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
just-
yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, yeah. If they were, because you should like if you've ever played Total War, like the one.
Oh, has he
it's
ever?
like yeah.
Have
Like-
I ever indeed?
Like if people are going to revolt, you just cut the taxes, and like if they're going to revolt, you just up them. But revolt is all about taxes. Even today, to like Yellow Jacket in France, that was just like taxes.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, no, essentially like tax. You need taxes to fund the army. You need taxes to like fund your campaigns. But
And
you
your
also
government too. Whatever you're paying the locals to keep them like pacified.
It's like
exactly
the mafia's protection fee, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Plus, Napoleon's got to pay for all those fancy costumes that he's got to wear to like appear Ottoman.
And
So-
of
Yeah.
course, all those
And he-
little red and white and blue, what are they, buttons or something?
Oh,
And
you're
has
talking
a-
about the shoot, what are they called? The cockades.
Yes,
It's like
yes.
the concentric circles that they had to wear that the Egyptians really didn't like. So they just kind of hid them or tossed them away if the French weren't looking.
That's like a
Yeah.
target. Hey, shoot here.
Pretty much.
They also
yeah.
had to get the licensing rights from the Bengals to play Walk Like an Egyptian everywhere, just to make
Yeah,
them
how else
fit
were
in
they
a
going
little
to get
more.
anywhere? You know, they just wanted to fit in. So it did have to cost them a bit more money. But the thing is, the moment the people got wind of this whole thing, well, apparently those quote unquote lacking in foresight found it unbearable. Because they're like, oh, they're taxing us even more now. How are we going to handle this kind of stuff? We're gonna revolt because of this. And this is like in Al Jabarti, once again, the Egyptians chronicles saying that the reasonable people went ahead and were like, you know what, this is fine. The tax is actually a bit lighter than before, and this is going to be easier to bear until, God willing, things are finally done and we get rid of the freaking French. You know, so just suck it up and live with it. It's not that big of a deal. Is kind of the more reasonable approach, at least in the mind of Al Jabarti here, who once again was a member of the notable council, the Diwam, and he may or may not have had some stakes in making sure that the whole tax policy went through. So, you know, but at the end of the day, we're talking about the rabble here, and those are the, I guess you could say, those lacking in foresight, those who weren't too happy with the new taxes. And
Naturally.
yeah, and so like, you know, they walk into their mosque, you know, on Friday, and they're like, you know, like now we're gonna pay this new tax. If we have to do 2 installments, now we're gonna do taxes twice a year. You know, no one likes doing that. That's even worse than just paying more taxes up front. And of course, the local ulama, which is like the religious clergy elite, also start getting wind of this too. And it's around this time that things are starting to become a bit more lax in Egypt. And one of the ways that it's becoming more lax is that Napoleon, he started off, he was well aware about the importance of religion in Egypt. And as part of his precautions, he ordered troops to like watch the town criers and the mosque criers, you know, people who would announce prayer, but who could also be passing along messages in like their daily calls to prayer and all that stuff as well. So he had that stuff kind of monitored and made sure like they weren't passing along any sort of like secret messages to revolts or anything like that. But around this time, people kind of started like taking a more relaxed attitude towards it. You know, like you listen to the same call to prayer after a month, you kind of just expect the same stuff. So the ulama are like, you know what? Higher taxes, an angry local populace, and the fact that the French are now more lax about like keeping oversight over the mosques. This might be the best time to, you know, launch a jihad. So,
Good.
Sure enough, yeah. I mean, they're like, we've had these French, you know, occupiers in Cairo just basically spreading their filthy ways, you know, with all their booze and all the prostitutes running loose in their side of the city, and also they're just taxing us to the bone.
And all those baguettes they keep on leaving around everywhere, making us trip on the bread.
Yeah, and here we are trying to go gluten-free, and they come in with all the baguettes. What are we going to do about this, you know? So they start preaching the message of jihad. And they're all about, you know, like, how can you be free men and still pay the poll tax to the unbelievers? Do you have no pride? Where is your true callings as Muslims? You got to stand up against the infidel. So they start really whipping up the populace to spread revolt. And also, there's rumors too that there's like Ottoman agents who are flooding into the city as well, who are like passing the message from mosque to mosque and neighborhood to neighborhood as well. And so ultimately, on the night of October 20th, 1798, the rabble finally gets called to action. They go ahead, they stir things up on this Sunday night, grabbing all the weapons that they have at hand, which, keep in mind, they don't have a lot of weapons. They're just like clubs, sticks, axes, you know,
God.
like literally all the most like basic stuff that they have to fight with. Hammers, latch bars, apparently hose.
Hammers,
true
sickles,
peasants
the
are.
guillotine.
Oh, if
It's-
only they had those. They weren't
a
even
true
really
peasant
ready for
army.
that.
I don't think you want to give the French army guillotines, though.
I think the French are a bit too OP with guillotines at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah. But
They
basically,
mastered the art.
yeah, no, they've had plenty of experience in the terror.
Robespierre's gonna come back from the dead
just to have one more fun guillotine party.
Yeah.
But at this point, they start rallying up in a few neighborhoods. The neighborhoods which also coincidentally tended to be on the outskirts of the city, not near where the French troops are quartered. So they got a bit more leeway to build up some speed and momentum. And the way that Al-Jabardi describes it is that they're like literally the riffraff of the town. The beggars, the paupers, the ruffians, the gang members.
The random newspaper guys that are beating up people.
Yeah, a few chaps with black shirts running around too, who had Italian accents for some reason. No one really knows. But basically, it's like the most like degenerate class, if you will, of Egyptian society being like riled up, grabbing all these weapons. And then soon there's like a horde of around like thousands of them. And there's like, the religious clergy are the ones who call them to action. There's like no defined leader trying to like direct them towards one way or another. And likewise, there's no like real unified message or communication going on. So the first thing they do, as most people try to do, is they go to their local representatives. The wealthy collaborators, if you want to look at it from their perspective, who are siding with the French and profiting off of the backs of their fellow brethren. They go up and they start clamoring to like go speak to them. And, as a good local representative, when they have people coming to demand change, the local sheiks immediately board up the windows and doors and refuse to come outside.
I mean, what are you supposed to do?
It's a Sunday night. You got work to go to tomorrow. You think you're going to spend time talking to these guys waving hose around?
This isn't my work. My work is being a sheik. I just do that all day.
Drop by on office hours tomorrow, when you can make it between my like time going to the baths and going to the bar. Well, not really to the bar, but like,
the clean, non-coffee, non-alcoholic bar.
Exactly. That bar.
The juice bar.
The juice bars, yes.
I only revolt between 9 to 5, sorry.
Yeah, you gotta comment on the hours. It's posted
if you're
on the
protesting,
door.
can you please do it when you're not bothering me?
Yeah, pretty much. But also, I don't know, maybe it was something about an angry mob being outside that kind of made them not want to open the doors to them. Just
it happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like opening my doors.
To angry mobs.
Yes.
But yeah, so basically, at this point too, some of them are like, hey, you know what? Maybe you should go talk to like the local judge if you have a problem at this hour. So they just kind of brush them over to the Qadi, which is like, a religious judge. Usually a figure of some authority in Muslim society. And that guy sees things, is like, oh, nope, and just boards up his window as well.
What is he gonna do? Be like, you're all collectively under arrest. Go turn yourselves in, please.
I mean, the sheiks were like, look, if anyone's going to be able to talk them down, it's the Qadi. Because like he's somewhat of a religious official, but he's also a civil like servant. So he could probably convince them to disarm themselves and just go back home. So, but the Qadi sees the crowd and just like locks up his windows and is like, haha, okay, someone go get the French. This is kind of scary now. We need some police over here.
And soon they're going to be talking to the Prime Minister of the world.
Yeah, exactly. What, are you talking about Napoleon?
Nah, like they keep getting higher and higher up the ladder. They're going to talk to God.
It's a chain of command kind of thing. Yeah, they demanded to see their manager.
And the manager's like, you should go see my manager.
Yeah, see the regional manager, and then before you know it, here's Napoleon in front of you.
But basically, the Qadi was like, oh shit, this is not good. Especially when they started throwing bricks and rocks at his door. So he's like, you know what? I think the best solution for this is to sneak out of my back window and try to go get help. So he immediately gets surrounded by the rioters and is like, hey guys, come on, chill. It's a hot night. Can I interest you guys in some coffee? You clear your head a bit? No? Okay, all right.
I wasn't trying to sneak out or anything. I was trying to give you all a surprise
getting my
greeting.
Supervisor. I was just
trying to get some clubs to sell.
Yeah. Like when I say I'm like hitting up the clubs, I don't mean you with that one there, friend. Just keep it down by your side. Thank you very much. But basically, he was like, look, you guys are upset. I'll go ahead. You don't need to follow that closely if you don't want to. But I'm gonna go and talk to the French on your behalf. And I'll convince them to not be pissed off at you guys for threatening a revolt, and I'll try to push for some better terms. You know? So the mob kind of like pushes him through, and then he runs into General Dupuy, who is the head of the French garrison. Basically the guy in charge of local policing in Cairo. Quite an impressive figure, in fact. But he shows up on horseback with like a small contingent of cavalrymen. And they're like, what's going on here? I don't know why he had a British accent, but he does. And
I mean, that's how
like,
all foreign people talk in
exactly,
American films.
Foreign colonists, you know, like colonial officials, they have an English accent. Yeah,
British accent is the most colonial accent we can think of.
But basically, he shows up and is like, look here, you chaps. If you want to talk things down a bit, I'll go talk to my supervisor, but you gotta put your hose down. Leave them at home. No one wants to see a hose on parade. So he's trying to keep things calm. And as, you know, any self-respecting police force does, if you want to keep a mass of angry people calm, he tells his horsemen to whip out their swords and start flashing them in the air. Because, you know, that tends to keep people happy and content with the light show. But one person dressed up as like a religious official springs forward and is like, you know, kill the infidel, just kill him. So they just charge him, knock him off the horse, and stab him to death, alongside with a bunch of his own horsemen. The Cadi is like, oh shit, I'm getting out of Dodge here. So the Cadi sneaks out, and meanwhile, the cavalrymen are just able to recover the body of General Dupuy as they start fleeing back. And now at this point, because the rioters have finally like spilled blood, they're like, oh, we got this. Look, the French are not invincible. We could kill them just like any sort of housefly. So they just start storming through the towns, through the streets of Cairo. And the biggest part is that they thought that this guy, because he's a white dude on horseback wearing fancy clothes, they're like, did we just kill Napoleon? Yo, we just killed Napoleon. Dude, we did it. We did it. Like the French are going to crumble any second now. So they just start spreading through the city, which once again, old cities in the Middle East, especially in Egypt, they're very winding, tight corridors and alleyways throughout with like gates that they can close. And they're starting to barricade the narrow streets to be able to hold off any troops that might be coming in. And on top of that, they just start, you know, spreading the news by like town criers and all that to all corners. Like, yo, we got a revolt coming. Grab your nearest polearm or something that's going to, you know, crack some French heads and join us out here on the streets. And they just start feeling like the entire Muslim population is finally on their side. Because if their religious officials told them to do so, clearly everyone who's a good Muslim is going to join, right?
So was the guy who killed the general actually a religious official, or was he just cosplaying?
Well, the record has it is that he kind of, well, the guy who told them to like go and attack was just some like, he's a perfumer apparently. You know, a guy who specializes in smelly gases, orders everyone to, you know, just go ahead and start attacking the French. And he just like dressed up like a religious official. So that was, people actually thought he was one.
Fake it till you make it.
You know?
What happened to him after?
Yeah, you know. But yeah, so at this point, they're like, yo, we got this. Everyone's going to be on our side. Next thing you know, the entirety of Cairo is going to be pushing out the invaders. Except not so much. Because, you know, there is something about watching this occupying force crush the local military force in like a matter of weeks. Something about that has a residual memory that kind of checks people's progress to go and revolt, you know? And that's especially the case when like entire neighborhoods just straight up refuse to turn out and support them. In fact, Al-Jabarti actually like writes it in here. Because like, remember how early on the reason why Napoleon even made it to Egypt was because the Mamluks were fighting with the local officials and fighting with each other. And there was just like, in general, the whole place in Egypt was completely disunified, right?
Right.
So like, that's still kind of the case in Egypt. I mean, just because you hate the French doesn't necessarily mean you agree with the rioters out in the street. And also a lot of the sheiks, you know, they are still local notables. They do have some sway over their neighborhoods that they live in. They're like, don't do this, dude. Just like, you don't want to be caught fighting against the French. The results are usually kind of bad.
Bro,
And,
we got the shit kicked out of us when we had swords. What are we gonna do with them? Fucking
Yeah.
hoe.
Exactly. And also, it's like, we don't have any guns. We don't have any sort of way to fight back. The French have cannons. They have horsemen. They have guns. They have everything. They've massacred the military elite in our country, in our region here. And you think you guys can, over the course of a night, be able to change things? I mean, bruh, you've been smoking way too much of that weed, my friend. So, and also the fact that when one neighborhood decided, like, oh, you know what? Revolt does sound like a fun thing. My Sunday night was kind of empty, so I might as well do something fun.
Yeah, the neighborhood block party got canceled.
Yeah, so we might as well turn out for this. So when they decide to revolt, and they happen to be one of those that are right next to a French quarter, they kind of just got massacred. So the others are like, look at that. You want to be part of that group, or you want to stay in the living? Just lock your doors, stay inside, and pretend nothing's happening. You know, just it's gonna blow over soon.
This sounds familiar too.
Yeah. So next morning, Napoleon's back in his place when all of a sudden a bunch of panicked sheiks break into his quarters demanding to see him. They're like, bro, sorry to barge in on you at this hour, but like half of Cairo is like up in revolt. And because we've kind of worked with you, we're kind of on the chopping block as well. Could you maybe send some bodyguards to our houses and make sure they don't break in? Thanks. You know, like, we'll try to talk them down. But at this point, they just got to work themselves, you know, out of this energy that they have. So, can we ride out the storm with some French protection? And Napoleon's like, yeah, that's great and all. But, like, look, where's everyone in the Diwan? Like, where are all the local representatives? And they were like, well, I mean, the Qadi kind of just got ran out of town. A bunch of others packed their shit and left for the suburbs to get out of the city before it burns down completely. And still others are, you know, locking themselves inside so they don't get murdered by the angry mobs outdoors. And Napoleon's like, well, if they don't show up within like a few hours, they're going to be the ones responsible for this revolt. You know, I'm just going to say that. I won't say what happens next, but like, you know, hey, be here or be dead. So, and also while you're at it, go and find everyone who's not here. Yes, I know you just risked life and limb to ride all the way over here, but you are going to get your ass back out there. And you're going to go spread the message to everyone that if they put down their weapons, nothing's going to happen to them. But if they don't, well, let's just say the Battle of the Pyramids was a nice rehearsal for what might be coming down in a bit. And so you could just imagine all these like poor sheiks who have had no sleep at all, rode panicked through the streets as like riots are breaking out, only to be sent back out there to go to the rioters to then tell them to put down their weapons, or else the French will massacre them. I mean, I don't envy the sheiks in that position, you know?
Yeah. Although, that's not... Do they expect the rioters to maul them alive when they kill the messenger or whatever?
It's
I mean, they
possible.
kind of already did kill a messenger.
I suppose they did.
Although I guess it was a French messenger.
Yeah. But like at this point too, the mobs are I mean they're not, once again, a very well organized mob. It wouldn't be a mob if it was well organized, to be fair. But like at this point, they're just like straight up looting and attacking everything. At first it's like we're anti-French. So okay, we see French troops, we killed them. Straightforward, you know? And then it becomes like we're also anti-Christian because all the Christians are the ones screwing over the Muslims here. You know, like all the Christians who became like small government officials and tax collectors, they're the ones that are like basically, you know, turning the screw on us while pretending to be like representatives of the French. So like, let's go attack the Christian neighborhoods. And then it becomes like, let's go rob the female underwear store. Which, I mean, you think I'm joking, but that's like literally one of the documented situations where like they just start looting.
They went
straight
pansy raiding.
Yep. Pretty much. But they're just like, they go out there and they start attacking the Christian neighborhoods, and then they start attacking the Muslims who live near them. And there's like documentation of rapes, looting, and murders happening everywhere. that the mob goes to, regardless if you're a Frenchman, an Egyptian, a Christian, a Muslim. And they're just also like started to target all the shops, from like the huge like locked up fancy Mamluk mansions that, you know, the French were using as headquarters. They break into them and start robbing them, to the Christian storefronts, which they go in there and start robbing them, to a women's clothing shop on Fifth Avenue. They break in there and start robbing them. And they're just like killing everyone on the streets that they run into at this point too. So, you know, for the sheiks to go into that kind of a storm and try to be like, hey guys, just put down your weapons and go back home, you'll get safe conduct. I think they were more concerned about their own safe conduct, if you will. So, in fact, one group actually like managed to get their hands on some muskets. So when they saw the sheiks riding towards them, they actually opened fire on them with a volley. And the sheiks were like, oh fuck, even the French are shooting on us too. Because they thought that like only the French had muskets on them. So they're like, well, we tried. The Egyptians hate us. The French hate us. Let's just go chill in the suburbs. You know?
Yo, those panties looking pretty good though. Let me go cop a couple before I go.
I mean, like, could you just imagine the priorities in the middle of a revolt? It's like, you know, you get woken up by your neighbor who's like, Amir, are you joining us out there? What's going on? Oh, you know, we're fighting against the French. And 5 hours later, you're like, oh man, this is some fine women's underwear. I'm just gonna scoop that up. Thank you very much.
Dude,
my wife is gonna.
The
love
Legos are all in an open display in Target right now.
Yeah, no, it's like literally the weirdest set of mixed priorities going on. I mean, I guess everyone's just jumping in. It's like
wasn't there like a guy there was a picture taken of some guy that was just robbing a Target and then took out a Bionicle set.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Some Lego set or something. Yeah.
Listen,
I'm in.
you know how much those things go for?
Honestly, yeah, Legos are pretty darn valuable as collector's items.
Who knows? After a riot, Legos might be the next big currency form, you know? Nice species to trade in.
You know, it's very standardizable. The pieces are all very well engineered to the nearest I don't know, couple micrometers or something.
And they're also pretty durable. So, like, you know, you don't need to worry about them breaking.
They're weapons.
Yeah, just throw them underfoot and then you can stop any riot, you know? Maybe that's what the French should have
It's
done.
like
Just throw
caltrops.
Legos on the ground. Yeah. But while the sheiks are running around, desperately trying to calm down the penny snatchers as they're revolting in the streets, the French are also kind of busy doing their own thing. Napoleon actually rides out in person to start organizing the troops, and he starts fortifying the citadel of Cairo, which is smack dab in the center of the city, a huge, already fortified location, now brimming with cannons and muskets and armed to the teeth by the French. And also they go out to the surrounding hillsides around Cairo, and they drag some cannons up there too, so it's aiming into the city itself. But when you look inside the city, aside from like the fortified locations there, the French don't have a big presence. So the rumor mill really starts turning. I mean, like, it could be like, you know, like, say, like, I'm running down the street and I'm like, Khalid, my friend, my neighbor, did you hear the great news? The French are sending the sheiks down to say that they're going to surrender. They're asking us to surrender because, you know, they're running out of ammo and water and they want to play it cool and all that. But they're actually like, you know, they're desperate, dude. We got the French on the run. You know, Khalid, go spread the word. You know, like, this is great news, joyous news.
Oi,
And then,
my boy, I heard that the French are dropping all their baguettes and running home to England.
Khalid, what is this you speak of? You're saying that the French are running to England?
That's right. They're turning tail and running back home.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I gotta go tell. Wait, are you sure this is true?
I tell you,
England's the place with the white flag, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you swear on the prophet, my friend. Khalid, this is true.
Yes, I heard this from the neighbors.
Oh my goodness.
Down 2 neighborhoods.
I gotta go talk to my like local women's underwear distributor. Amir.
Hello, yes, I distribute women's underwear.
Yeah, Amir. Did you hear the whole news? The French are wiped out completely and Napoleon is dead. Like, at this point, we could go and start looting more than just women's underwear. We could go pick up muskets and stuff. I know it's not your line of trade and you like pushing your things, but like, this is a great opportunity.
What happened to the French?
Oh, they surrendered and then we killed them, I guess. I don't know. But they're dead is all that matters. So like
I heard that
show up.
Napoleon was strangled by a pair of women's underwear.
Oh my gosh, Kareem, are you telling
I've
me
done
that
it
Napoleon
again.
is dead?
Ladies and gentlemen, I've done it again.
Napoleon was strangled to death by a pair of women's underwear, and apparently an army of Bedouins, the guys who were, raping and looting the fleeing Egyptian army after the Battle of the Pyramids, they kind of showed up and they're now heroes and they wiped out the French out on the hills. So we're safe. We're all good.
Good job.
Yeah. And then the news just keeps spreading and building to the point where they're like, yeah, all the French are dead. And at this point, if anyone comes up asking us to put down our weapons and to give safe conduct, they're just collaborators trying to get protection for themselves. So, they are very, very self-delusional in this entire regard.
Guys, we actually deleted the entire country of France from the map. There's this big ocean where in
France
between
used to be.
Germany and Spain right now. Don't worry about it.
France is just gone. It's deleted. France surrendered. Surprise, surprise. France surrendered. And it's just
France
Yeah.
surrender joke funny. We're literally in a series about them beating the shit out of Egypt for 3 years. France funny.
Yeah, but at this point, literally at this point, it's just no holds barred. Whatever you want, go and do what you want. So they're just going around looting, murdering, raping, and it's just utter chaos. And Napoleon, meanwhile, he's out on the hillsides. He checks his pocket watch. He's like, huh, they're not surrendering. Well, I gave them a warning. So goes ahead and starts ordering his cannons to start shooting into the city. And remember, these are packed, tightly jammed cities. And the masses of people, as well as the people who are trying to stay out of the entire thing, who are locking themselves in their houses, all of a sudden their neighborhoods just start getting bombarded by cannonballs and bombs as well flying in. And
Napoleon's going for the 300 game.
Pretty much, yeah.
13 strikes in a row.
Yeah. And it's just huge carnage just going on. He just starts opening fire. And one of the big things is that, as a general source of refuge, people are like, oh shit, things are going down. Let's run to the mosques and take shelter in the mosques. Well, Napoleon was very well aware that it was the religious ulama who whipped up the fervor to begin with. So he particularly aims for the mosques to start fire and just starts blowing up the mosques left and right in the various neighborhoods where the riots are going on. And after a while, the bombardment just straight up knocks the fight out of most of the rioters. So at this point, they've thrown down all their stuff, their hose, their poles, their panties, and they've just all, are just trying to duck out of the fire of it all. And the sheiks go up to Napoleon's like, look, I think you made the message clear. You got cannons. They don't. Can we go down and maybe just try to negotiate a peace? And Napoleon's like, all right, fine. But here's the thing. Everyone gets amnesty except for anyone who was responsible for killing anyone or those who sparked the revolts. We'll launch our own investigation, but basically whoever we find guilty of that, we'll summarily execute. And the sheik's like, well, I don't think people who have just been slaughtering a bunch of people and the ones who started the revolt, the ones who you want to calm down and stop the revolt are going to surrender if you're just going to go and kill them. So, if you can make the terms a bit more lenient, we'll keep an eye on them, house arrest, we'll take all their property and give it to you. You seem very big on that, right, Napoleon? So, why don't we just do that and call it a day, And Napoleon's like, no can do, boss. I'm the one with the cannons here. So if you're going to argue, speak to these guns.
I'm the one with the really big gun.
Exactly. So the sheiks, being like, all right, you know what? Fuck it. Let's go. For the second time that, in the past day or so, they go riding out into the neighborhoods, promising amnesty to everyone except for those who basically took part in the riot. So as a result, a lot of the people who were taking shelter, they went ahead and came out of hiding and accepted the amnesty. And for the most part, a lot of people, because of the heavy bombardment, they're like, you know what, fuck it. We'll just take the punishment as it comes. Just don't level the entire city. There was one exception. It's documented as the Al Husayniya quarter in Egypt, which kept on trying to fight. And so Napoleon went on and bombarded that one neighborhood for 3 hours before they finally gave up. 3 hours.
It's some
Just
serious shell shock there.
Oh, absolutely. Just straight up leveled that entire neighborhood there.
At that point, you're just wasting money on the cannonballs.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. So at this point, Napoleon's confident enough to start sending his troops into the town. Because, everyone surrendered for the most part. And it goes in, the troops, the first priority is they start breaking up the barricades and try to seize all the weapons. And they go around and I talked about this last time, but one of the good old excuses about searching for weapons is you can break into people's houses and just rob them silly. So the French troops, pissed off after the whole thing, they just start going into people's houses and robbing them. So just think about yourself. You're a good, upstanding Muslim citizen of Cairo who just got your house looted by a bunch of other professed righteous Muslims during the revolt. And now the peacekeeping French, in their claims of amnesty, come storming down, knock down your door, and steal whatever things that the other people didn't steal, and then kill, I don't know, half your family just for the hell of the entire thing. So it's not a good day to be a citizen of Cairo. Let's just put it that way.
Oof.
Yeah. And also at this point, too, they start setting up different kind of checkpoints throughout the city. They break down all the gates to make sure that no one can bar them out. And if you're just even walking by, they go ahead and, steal all your stuff, claiming that they're just seizing contraband. And if they feel like it, they could just kill you. All the while, they're telling the sheiks to go out there and be like, oh, all the people have safe passage, and tell everyone to open up the shops and pretend like it's business as usual. Just, don't mind the 20 dead bodies in that corner over there, And so there's a bit of a mixed messaging going on here. And the other part, too, is that the French also march in and start occupying the mosques. So they go into the mosques, those that they haven't just completely leveled, and they start looting the place. And in some instances, if they stumble upon a student hiding in the mosque, they go ahead and just kill the person straight up. No questions asked. And it's just utter carnage, but this time now perpetrated by the French. And it's just, I guess you could say it's pretty revolting unto itself, too. Mm-hmm. Very morbid picture indeed. But basically, after the whole revolt. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
At this point, basically the whole thing that the French were trying. I'm not excusing that, but the French were trying to walk an really tight rope, because they're stuck in Egypt. Yeah. They didn't have supplies already for reinforcements from France. They had to rely on Egypt to keep the army alive, and also they can't recuperate their losses. There's no Frenchmen to recruit in Egypt, very few.
Right.
So, and you can recruit local Egyptians. Basically, your 36,000 army, it's just going to slowly whittle down.
Exactly.
And as long as the whole game of let's cooperate, let's work together was up, there was kind of a hope of survival. But with the revolt, you kind of understand, fuck, it's over.
Yeah.
There's no saving this, because now the population is gonna hate us. And also we have to punish them in some way, but also we can't punish them too much, they revolt again. And essentially, you just have a French army who know they're doomed, and they're like, crap, how can we undo ourselves? There's no way.
They're a cornered animal, basically, at this point.
Exactly. The English don't even have to come in and swoop them up. They're just gonna.
They're just gonna die out. Yeah. So it's a particularly rough situation here. After the whole revolt happens, the Christians especially are demanding reparations for the entire thing, because they're they stole everything from my house, my warehouse, and even my underwear. We demand that we get this stuff back and that those responsible get punished. And of course, Napoleon himself is we can't let this go away, So we're just gonna Like, we tried playing nice, we wore your fancy turbans and you still tried to stab us in the back. So, like, we're just going to switch over to, like, the good old-fashioned style of mass interrogations, torture, and killings.
Yeah, I'm never going to play these fucking stupid Bengals again.
Yeah. So it got to the point where he, like, literally is bragging about, like, I made sure that Egypt was peaceful by killing 30 people every day. In fact, there's some accounts by some of his officers who say that, like, at least in the initial first nights, they would just drag out, like, hundreds of people, men, women, and children, just kill them and then dump their bodies either into the river or in mass graves and just pretend as if nothing happened. All the while, Napoleon's like, ha! Look at them. They know that I could have burned down their entire city if I wanted to.
They
Except
should
for the
be
fact that, like,
thinking
this is
me as
basically
the savior.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, like look, if I wanted to, I could have destroyed their entire city. So the fact that I'm allowing them to, like, still somewhat be alive, they should be grateful. Not to mind the fact that, like, burning down my only, like, headquarters would kind of destroy the entire purpose of conquering Egypt. I mean, but I'm sure, like, burning up a major city in the middle of a campaign is not going to be a problem for me to worry about, right? That's never going to happen. Cough, cough, Moscow, cough, cough. He also goes ahead and just orders that all the mosques, like a bunch of mosques, be just straight up destroyed. And he clears out a bunch of the gates and starts building up, like, trenches and fortifications inside and outside of the city of Cairo, just to make sure that nothing like a revolt like this could ever possibly get off the ground again.
Are those still there?
The fortifications or the mosques?
Yeah, the fortifications. Like, are they there in modern day Cairo?
Most of them are actually gone at this point, because they were kind of like ad hoc measures. Once again, a lot of them were just trenches or, like, small little wooden outposts built up in the place. And spoiler alert, the French did not get to keep Egypt because they were actually forced out. So that was probably one of the reasons why those fortifications don't exist anymore, or at least not the original French ones. Also, just, like, in case it wasn't clear before that the Douam didn't do jack shit, really, Napoleon just straight up abolishes the Douam's meetings. So no more consulting with the locals about how to run things. And just to sprinkle it on top, at this point, they go ahead and start taxing more things. But for some reason, the Egyptians didn't really feel like speaking out this time. So I guess it kind of worked in a very bloody way. Or at least for the city of Cairo, it works. Because there were still, like, a few local villages out there who, like, they got the message about, like, we strangled Napoleon with a pair of panties. And they're like, oh, huzzah, let's revolt. And they didn't quite get the aftermath news about how, the revolt just got put down and a bunch of mosques got bombarded by the French. So a few villages revolt. And Napoleon's just like, look, I play nice with the people in Cairo because it's a whole city of people and we can't wipe out that many people. But for these small villages, you there, Grushi, you go out there, take 50 men, kill all the men in that village, bring me back all their heads, and bring all the women and children back on a forced march, Yeah, I know it's a 2-day hike. Don't bother with bringing any extra water. It's fine. They die, they die. So there's accounts of how when local villagers in the area revolt, thinking that the one in Cairo was a success, the French troops get marched in there and basically go ahead and massacre entire villages. Like, there's accounts of entire villages being straight up razed, other ones in which all the men had their heads cut off, brought back to be displayed in Cairo, and all the women and children forced to march back, and any who died on the side of the streets as they were marching through because they were just malnourished, they were just thrown to die out there. And in one particular example, they go ahead, they kill the head of, like, the village and his entire family, except for the youngest son, who they then prop up to be the new head of the village. And the kid's, like, 8 years old. They wiped out his entire family, except for him. So, man. Yeah, the French were not playing around at this point.
Some heavy-handed politics.
Absolutely, yeah. But, I mean, say what you will, as Gabe was saying, like, it was a desperate strait for the French. And at least in the immediate aftermath, the gamble seemed to pay off. Because after the Cairo Revolt, there were no more major large revolts, at least. There's still like some guerrilla activity here and there in Egypt, at least while Napoleon was around. So it kind of worked. Hooray! Massacres. So,
Oh yeah. So the funny thing is that this morning, literally this morning,
Mhm.
I started reading The Prince by Machiavelli.
Yeah.
And essentially, like in the very beginning of the book, like, hey, how to like conquer stuff and like keep it.
Yeah.
And he takes as an example like the French king like walking to Italy and like conquering Milan but never being able to keep it. And he basically sets up a whole thing like if you do a military administration, that's never gonna work because people will revolt. It's expensive. You tax people to finance the military. That means like people will revolt more. There will be more military.
it's
He's
a
like,
vicious cycle.
yeah, he's like that's a dead end. Like you're never gonna keep. And then you cannot also leave people by themselves because like they're gonna revolt, walk away. So he said in the book he essentially says, you have to create small colonies. You basically have to import your own people. Like you wipe out like kick out an entire village or two. You put French people in those villages and like around the town, and like they that minority French people there will say will like cement your
loyal.
control over the region.
Yeah.
It will give you more control. And
So it's
yeah,
like the
essentially-
French in Algeria, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And like unlike Egypt, the French kept Algeria for quite a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah, the whole thing with like Napoleon going to Egypt, like the whole thing is you cannot keep a territory that's so far away from home with just an army,
Yeah.
like, the navy. Either you'd have to send like hundreds of thousands of French citizens to go to Egypt, but still like not under control.
Yeah.
Or you can just like you can try to conquer Egypt and like then leave and like just like fall back out, and you can only hope that you pillage more than you spent on the whole campaign.
Well, that seems to be Napoleon's like main hopes at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Like
yeah.
at this point, like you kind of like, oh, okay, like I lost. All I can like try to like sunk loss fallacy. I just like pillage as much as possible. I fuck off. The Egyptians will never come to France, so like I don't care. You know, like what are consequences? Am I right?
Big surprise! 2 years later, the Egyptians arrive in Paris and loot Paris. Yeah, no. At this point, it really is that. Except Napoleon, being Napoleon, is always like, "Ha! Defeat's not a thing that's gonna happen to me. I'm Napoleon. I am favored by fortune. You know, like whatever I set to my mind, I will succeed." So at this point, he's kind of like refreshed his new plan, and basically, here's the idea. Okay, trying to go and take Egypt without French support, that's not going to happen. But what can happen is take the French army that you have in Egypt, you march it through Syria, across what is now modern day Iraq, and then link up with Persia, which is modern day Iran, and then work with the Persians to then fight against the Ottomans while setting up outposts to then go attack British India. What could go wrong? You know?
Yes. It all comes back to the British.
Yeah, pretty much. And he's just thinking to himself, like, look, if Alexander the Great can do this, you know, like, because like he's almost following the same exact trajectory from Egypt, like goes to Egypt and then it goes across the Middle East all the way to India. You know, it's gonna work out just fine. So he goes ahead and is like, I'm gonna be Alexander of the 18th century, and he starts heading off on January 25th, 1799. So like a few months after like the whole Cairo Revolt happened. And also at this point, he's basically knocked out the backbone of the Mamluk resistance, even the guerrilla resistance at this point, and taken over much of southern Egypt too. The only thing is, you know, when it takes you a year to take over a region, especially a big region like Egypt, the country that the region belongs to is going to take notice. So the Ottomans, which once again, Napoleon was pretending to be like, oh, I'm just throwing at the Mamluks because I support the Ottomans. And the Ottomans are actually, you know, approving of this entire French expedition. They're, surprise, surprise, they're not a fan of France taking over Egypt. and they're actually coordinating with the British Navy to start sending reinforcements down south, right as Napoleon is marching his forces up north in Syria. So the first thing that happens, and I'll just keep this brief because the series is on Napoleon in Egypt, and we're in Syria now. But basically, Napoleon goes out and fights the siege of Jaffa, which doesn't go super hot for Napoleon, especially when the plague breaks out. But Napoleon wins the siege, despite the fact that it's a well-fortified town. And, just to really endear himself to the local populace, he goes ahead and orders the mass execution of all Ottoman prisoners, as well as gives the okay for 2 days of raping and pillaging in the city after its capture. So, really going with the whole, like, if you can't keep it, you might as well just take as much of it with you, mentality.
Some real scorched earth.
Oh, yeah. But the way that scorched earth tends to work is if you're defending, you scorch a lot of earth so that the attacker gets nothing. In this case, I guess Napoleon was burning himself. I suppose. I mean, like, it's a get-rich-quick scheme. It doesn't really pay off, though, because the next place he hits is another fortified city called Acre, which also has a big port. So the French are able to just keep on sending ships filled with supplies to while Napoleon surrounds it on land. And Napoleon's just, like, stomping his feet on the side after, like, 2 months of trying to attack the place. And, of course, once again, the bubonic plague breaks out amongst his troops. So, after 2 months of stiff resistance, also, with the locals being like, well, you saw what happened when Jaffa surrendered. They massacred everyone and just raped and pillaged the entire town. So, I think we're just going to keep on holding out. We got this nice thing going with British food drops here and there. There's a lot of tea and crumpets, which we're not a huge fan of, but, we'll make do with that. It's better than a baguette to the face, I suppose. And as a result, Napoleon has to call it quits after 2 months and just marches back to Egypt. And then, as a great hero of history would do, he, he's back in Egypt. He's forced back. Things are looking desperate. This is like that moment in like every single movie where the hero gives a stirring speech, rallies the people together, and does something amazing. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
So Napoleon goes ahead and is like, men of the Republic, I am going to go take a cruise down the Nile to see if we can't find some other way out of here. Who knows? We might be able to find our way to South Africa by sailing down the Nile. No one knows how far the Nile goes. And then he goes back to his headquarters to prepare and packs 4 ships, loads it up with just his key bodyguards and a few like key scientists and generals. And on August 23rd, sails away, headed for France. And like his entire army is just like, oh, I heard that the general's like, off taking a cruise on the Nile. It's been about a month. You hear back from him? No? Yeah, no, it's kind of weird. Wonder where he went. He wouldn't desert us, no? No, he's Napoleon. He doesn't ditch his army so he could head back to France and seize power. What kind of a dick move is that?
What happens when an army is just left there?
Well, after a while, they get a postcard from France being like, wish you were here, BT dubs, I'm not in Egypt anymore, in case you didn't notice. And good luck, General Kleber is in charge. Have fun, bye. And Napoleon just kind of ditches his entire army. And meanwhile, he comes back, is like, I am the conqueror of the mystic Orient. I defeated the descendants of the pharaohs, and I have come back to bring glory to France. And they're like, didn't you get your entire fleet destroyed by the British? It's like, yeah, but that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about the future. How do you think I look as Emperor of France? Too soon? Okay, all right. You know what? Let's go with first consul and dictator for life, and we'll work our way up there. But he just basically hams up this entire Egyptian expedition as like a critical success for France, for civilization, in air quotes here. And meanwhile, his army is just like, yo, what the fuck, dude? We're not even getting paid for this shit. So they try to hold on for a bit. And meanwhile, General Kleber, the poor sap who's left in charge of administering Egypt, is still technically ruling it for France. but he's just more busy in terms of like trying to negotiate an evacuation. And after 3 years, and after General Kleber gets shanked by some pissed off Egyptians, the Ottomans and British finally force the French expedition, this time like a paltry, tattered, plague-ridden army, out of Egypt and back to France. At this point, too, of course, Napoleon has already gone ahead and cemented his power. So, when his veterans come back being like, wait, you're saying that little dipshit who ditched us in Egypt is trying to become emperor? And people kind of already rallied behind Napoleon. So there wasn't much that they could do except, shut up and listen to him, I suppose. But 3 years in Egypt. I mean, technically not Napoleon. He stayed about a year before he ditched. But still, the audacity and just like the foolhardiness of the entire expedition, it's kind of mind-boggling to perceive. That's like imagine if America invaded some country in the Middle East, like, I don't know, Afghanistan, let's say, goes in there, throws out the local government, and then tries to take control for a while, only to then try to pull out with their head leaders and then just like leave a portion of the army there to slowly die out on its own,
Yeah, that would never happen.
Yeah, that would never happen.
No. The U.S. would never try to install a government and then leave while it all falls apart.
Yeah, no, that's not the American way,
Yeah, but here it's even better because you also abandon the army. Like, you deploy like 100,000 US troops in like the Middle East, and you're like, okay, bye.
Have fun, Hope you learn the local language because you're going to be having to speak with the locals for quite a while. And just like, yeah. But it's absolutely absurd how this whole thing goes down. Oh, also, by the way, the guy who ultimately succeeded in terms of leading the French out of Egypt is a guy by the name of Jacques Abdullah. And if that last name sounds a bit weird for a Frenchman, it's because he actually converted to Islam while in Egypt. So,
Wow.
the whole like the French are like too good for like Islam thing, it kind of fell out pretty quick when you realize, well, I'm gonna have to live with this. So, they did start converting after a while. If at the very least to, play nice with the locals. But like just kind of like taking a step back and looking at the whole like crazy expedition of Napoleon in Egypt, I mean, yes, Egypt didn't really stay under the control of the French, but the French did get a lot out of Egypt, arguably. Not in terms of like, turning it into a breadbasket so that they could have continuous baguettes flying, like shipped over from Egypt. But more as like, on an intellectual level, they got a lot out of it. Like, for example, they were able to start mapping out the remnants of the ancient pharaohs' canals in Egypt, and they drew up plans to build the Suez Canal, something that's going to be talked about in our next series. So there's that, The ambitions for one of the most busy waterways was charted by the French during this harebrained expedition. So that's something.
So would you say Napoleon won in the end?
In
a way.
Not quite, but I guess you could say, in a sense, Western civilization kind of won. In the sense that, like,
Egypt definitely didn't win.
Oh no, Egypt got suckered in this entire deal.
And
first they were screwed by the Mamluks.
Did Napoleon not lose, rather?
I mean, arguably Napoleon did lose. He saw his first decisive defeat at the Siege of Acre. So now his like whole reputation of being invincible is now shattered. Obviously, he tried his best to cover it up, being like, I mean, yes, I got defeated by Acre, but check out these 23 volumes all about Egypt that we got, and this is the thing. It's called the La Description de l'Egypte. It's a 23-volume text complete with like inscription, like images and maps of Egypt. That's like basically the entire amalgamation of Egyptian knowledge that the Egyptian Institute that Napoleon set up was able to compile. And they also went ahead and started, promoting, I guess what you could say is like the scientific method and like more like Enlightenment kind of thinking in Egypt as well. Because the scientists who stuck around in the institute and all that, the institute to this day still exists in Cairo, the Egyptian Institute set up by Napoleon. So like they were able to start promoting more Western style learning, which later on, the part of the like Ottoman English force that came and kicked out the French, there was a certain officer in there who then seized power by the name of Muhammad Ali in Egypt, and he really took that Western knowledge to good use in terms of turning Egypt into an industrialized kind of place for a while. So there's that, and also there's the Rosetta Stone, which the Egyptians kind of had stolen from them by the French and then the British, because they're like, okay, welcome to fuck you British ship lines. As you're coming on, please be ready to declare all sort of things to customs, and all carry-on luggage has to be below the size of a musket. Thank you, and once again, welcome on board. And then there's like a French scientist being like, hey, I got this giant stone here carved with inscriptions in 3 different languages. Can I get a tag for this, please? And can you make sure you like handle this with a bit of care? And the British are like, all right, chap, we'll just take that from your hands there, and that will belong in the British Museum. Thank you very much for your contribution. And so yeah, and the Rosetta Stone ended up in British hands.
Well, at least they didn't steal from the Egyptians.
Yeah, technically they didn't steal from the Egyptians.
They can have some small moral high ground.
Yeah, and it's not like the British will ever rob from the Egyptians again.
It's like a moral molehill, but it still counts.
A moral molehill. That is a wonderful way to put the British in this regard. But yeah, pretty much. And so yeah, I mean, all in all, I guess like the biggest thing that the French got, alongside with all the enemies that they made along the way, was some knowledge about Egypt. Something that could have gotten if they just came in nicely and been like good tourists. So.
And nothing can compare to the value of knowledge.
Yeah. And you know what's the craziest part about this entire thing?
No, what was it?
Well, Napoleon came into Egypt thinking to himself, I am favored by fortune. Luck is always on my side. He faces a revolt. His army gets struck by the fucking bubonic plague. He gets his ass whooped for the first major time. He has his entire fleet decimated. And yet, even when he's on his like tiny dinky boat sailing back to France, he's like, fortune's on my side, even if the British have a big fleet. And he still believed in that shit.
He's a real glass half full dude.
It's not even glass half full. He's like, the glass is fucking overflowing.
Dude, there's literally no way you do all that shit unless your ego is the size of the fucking Jupiter.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's probably the biggest thing. Like, if the British didn't sink Napoleon's fleet, his ego would have sunk it. But just like, it's honestly mind-boggling. More so than how like successful like he by pure luck was able to do it, just like by how deluded he was in his own sense. Like he thought he was gonna be like Alexander the motherfucking Great, go coasting across the Ottoman Empire with a plague-ridden, mutinous army and invade British India, even after everything else went up in smoke. Like this guy just had no chill with everything. And the fact that he got away with a lot of it too just goes to show that, sometimes dumb luck does hit the craziest of scenarios. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you look at history, like dumb luck is a major factor for so many like world events shape the world today.
Yeah.
So like you can never take it into account. Like you can always have just like the dumbest stuff happening, like pure luck coincidences.
Oh yeah.
Like even like the classic, I think, is like look at World War II. Like Stalin, who was the most skeptical and the most paranoid man on earth at the time. Like he had a massive mansion, like 5 rooms that looked the same, and he would sleep in them randomly. Wouldn't know where he was because he was going to be murdered.
Yeah.
But the one person this guy decides to believe and trust, the one person in the whole world, is Hitler. The biggest liar of his time.
It just all works out.
Like how? Like how? Why? Like maybe we'll do this, but like stories that um, German soldiers defected from the German army like days before Barbarossa, and were like the the
To the
Russian High
Russians.
Command.
Yeah.
We are going to attack. We are going to attack. Like, be prepared.
Mhm.
And Stalin was like, "Oh yeah, those guys are full of shit. Like, shoot them now."
Mhm.
like, and then, like a week later, like the German army attacks. Like, how could it have happened?
And Stalin's just like surprised Pikachu face. And
No, exactly. like the clueless rich comic guy. Like,
yeah.
today I will not trust like everybody except Hitler. Clueless.
But like,
yeah, no.
yeah.
And Napoleon is just that. Napoleon is just like pure dumb luck.
Yeah.
He's just like, yo, I'm gonna do something. I mean, also he was right because the French Revolution was such a mess that like France had been at war with like most of Europe for the past year and had been winning. And like Napoleon was the emperor that
Right.
France was like in constant civil war and unrest, and they were still winning like most of Europe.
Well,
It's kind of-
surviving, I think, is the better way to put it. Napoleon was able to push a few successes here and there, but it's mostly just retaining its borders.
No, yeah, true. Like Napoleon pushed Italy, but like still, like wasn't heard of.
Right.
Like having like it's like if you were like in the middle of a like stroke and you were still like beating people around you. Like it's just.
I don't know. I don't know, Gabe, if you've listened to our episodes on Mussolini in Italy, but we described France because it was undergoing so many government changes during like the interwar period as just being a guy constantly having a stroke. So the fact that you're talking about France having a stroke while fending off every other guy in the bar, that's pretty accurate for France of the 1780s and 1790s.
A very fitting motif for the nation.
Yeah.
Like,
forget the sick man of Europe, the stroke man of Europe.
Strokes happen in the brain. They don't have a brain. It's all been guillotined off.
Oh, damn.
They started cutting off like 12 inches of it.
Yeah, France is constantly like having like a political stroke and like, pulling it off for some reason.
France.
Except in World War II. But yeah, no, and Napoleon, and I mean, at that you'd be like, why the fuck not? Like, I'm gonna take 30,000 men. I'm gonna go to Egypt and I'm gonna like do something and maybe it's gonna work. I don't know, like try.
And the director is like, well, he signed his death warrant, so have fun out there. And then he shows up in France back again. He's like, wait, I thought you lost your fleet. It's like, well, I found a few new boats, so I dodged the British Navy again, and then I came back to France. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like good time before people know I fucked up.
Well, anyways, that's Napoleon in Egypt, and that's going to be the end of this series here. But once again, thank you guys for joining me here. It's been a lot of fun having you all on here. Through the puns and the purgatory of professional profanities being purged throughout this podcast. It's been a wonderful time, and we look forward to hearing you guys and seeing you guys on the next podcast. But until then, it's Noteworthy History. I'm Tong, and thanks for listening.